could have. And like I said, even then I think he'd had to drive pretty fast. Whether or not he was treated like anyone else, I think he was. He got exactly what anyone else would got. He walked into the courtroom the same as anyone else did, and he walked out the same as anyone else did. I mean, he was treated absolutely no different, which to me is what is very essential in our system.
There you go.
I guess so.
Okay. You ever had one of these?
No, I don't even know what it is.
What kind of problem?
William Hayden is about to have a checkup from the neck up. His doctor wants to make sure Hayden's head and neck blood vessels are clear 14 years after a stroke. In the past, patients had to undergo an expensive and time-consuming procedure to have their arteries examined. Thanks to a new technique called digital subtraction, William Hayden will be going home in 30 minutes.
Just kind of cold stuff. I'm going to clean your arm up here a little bit, okay?
Digital radiography teams a sophisticated X-ray camera and a computer. The camera photographs dye injected into the patient's vein. The computer subtracts unwanted anatomy like muscles and bones.
It's non-invasive. The study itself is very limited. You know, we give a certain amount of dye, and of course the radiation is quite a bit less, so it's a very safe procedure.
Hold very still, sir.
A radiologist will interpret the computer's results. His conclusions will be forwarded to the patient's doctor.
Let me study it closer. They're going to take those films off and see. So far it looks pretty good, really.
Digital subtraction has not eliminated the need for the more expensive angiograms, but it does allow medical professionals to study a patient's blood vessels and determine whether further study is needed. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at Baptist Medical Center.
Because I found out after 15, this negative peer pressures and me following these gangs and almost getting killed when I got stabbed. Because I went home bleeding and beat up, and my father beat me again. And he beat me because he said I wasn't making decisions for myself.
Wally Jones was a guard for the Philadelphia 76ers when they won the World Championship in 1976. Since then, he's been trying to help high school students around the country be champions themselves as individuals and positive role models for others.
So there are so many negative things, but I had the will to prove that I wanted to do some other things, to prove that I could become something other than what I was then.
I'm the only one like me out of 4.7 billion. I'm priceless. When I started believing that, my life changed. That's what we want them to start believing. You don't have to dress like anybody. You don't have to walk like anybody. You don't have to talk like anybody. Start developing the you in you.
How could we prevent teenagers from drinking and driving?
These students are all members of some activity club at Kingfisher High School, whether it be academically oriented, cheerleading, sports, or band. They are the so-called E.F. Huttons of the school, and the idea is to impress positive values on them, and in turn they will pass those values and lessons on to students who are not at this retreat.
You're learning to cope, not to follow your peers, and learning to be yourself and be independent.
The impact of this retreat will be evaluated by the state, and if deemed successful, could be provided to other Oklahoma students in the future. Terry Cook, Action 4.
This is Darla, Oklahoma City Police Department. We need your mental health unit.
Oklahoma City police dispatchers are responsible for getting officers to where they are needed as quickly as possible. Only oftentimes, officers are sent to locations where they are of no use. This problem is especially apparent when automatic alarms are involved. Last year, 97 out of 100 calls where automatic signaling devices were used were false alarms. The bogus alarms are costing taxpayers $200,000 annually. Police think the wrong people are paying.
We don't think that the police department ought to choose by policy not to go to some alarm. We think that through some local ordinances, local legislation. We ought to be penalizing those who continue to have repeated false alarms. Somebody's paying for that police officer to go out there, and we feel like that the alarm subscriber or the alarm company ought to pay for the increase in false alarms, not the taxpayer throughout the city.
Lieutenant McBride expects city leaders to study passing laws that will address the false alarm problem. What really upsets police is that in many cases, accidentally setting off alarms could be avoided. And there are those who use the alarms just to see how quickly officers can respond. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
If there is a normal a normal attrition, as in past years, that he does not think anyone will have to be terminated for the school year 84-85. Add here that
and some of these people will actually be moved into some of those positions that we've reorganized to. Some of them will be going to the classroom, because that's probably the only positions that we have left open by the end of the year. But we've taken the position that if we notify our personnel early enough, then they can count on the fact that that position will not be there at the end of the year, and that's why we're terminating them early enough, the position early enough.
We'll have a number of witnesses who are scheduled to testify.
More than 100 people crowded into a meeting hall in Guthrie to argue the merits of the $270 million project, a plan proponents say is needed to ensure adequate water supplies. But opponents argue it's a pork barrel project. Called the Seward Lake project, it would create a reservoir southwest of Guthrie. State and federal officials say it would provide an extra 22 million gallons a day of drinking water, help control flooding, and provide recreation areas. The hearing was organized by Senator Don Nichols, who admitted today he has reservations about the project. And in fact, the only ringing endorsement of the project came from state and federal officials, who say the coming demand for water in Oklahoma makes the project a top priority.
And based upon the yield from Arcadia for Edmond and for Oklahoma City's supply of McGee Creek, we still felt like the needs were there for this reservoir within the next 15 to 20 years.
But under questioning from Nichols, officials admitted the multi-million-dollar project would not stop flooding like Guthrie had this fall.
By itself, that's not an adequate solution to the problem. About the best that we could hope to do would be to maybe knock the peaks off of some of these large floods like we had in October.
If approved, the reservoir would displace hundreds of families. Some of them were at the meeting, arguing the project's benefits aren't worth the cost.
I run cattle. I'm going to have to go somewhere else now and find my hay because I'll be out of hay ground. And I don't know of any place up or down the creek that I'm going to go because it's already taken.
We have a huge federal deficit. President Reagan is constantly stressing we have to cut that deficit. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Well, right here's a way to cut it, $270 million.
So while many agree there will be water needs for this area in the years ahead, there is strong disagreement if the Seward Lake project is the right solution. Jeff Fowler, Action 4, Guthrie.
Upstream from the reservoir site. Additional information.
We can't close a facility. We can only point out where they're out of compliance with the law. And then it's up to the regulatory agencies to decide whether they will stay in operation or not. And in this case, the facility itself decided to close down. They hadn't been told to close by any state agency.
I'm Scott Wallace. Karen Silkwood's family was delighted to hear about the Supreme Court ruling. Karen's father, Bill Silkwood, spent much of the day on the phone sharing the good news with friends and relatives.
It is compensation in the sense that she was vindicated, and also that this award means that it's a form of punishment for Kurt McGee.
It's affirmed some of my faith in the system.
Karen Silkwood's former boyfriend, Drew Stevens, echoed the praise for the High Court's decision.
I'm real happy for the family and estate, and I'm very pleased, not that this is a final chapter, but that I think it is a very, very important step in the right direction.
If the ruling stands, the $10 million will go into a trust fund for Silkwood's 3 children. Beverly, Dawn, and Michael now live with their father in Ardmore. And if she were still alive, what would Karen Silkwood say about the court ruling?
I think she'd be very tickled, but she'd say that $10 million wasn't enough.
Scott Wallace, Action 4 tonight.
Terrell. Mr. President, if you'll look briefly, and members,
a goose that not lays a golden egg.
Obviously based on an AG opinion, but that is certainly, guys.
Mr. President, on by the shortfall, so I would ask unanimous consent.
I resented the fact that we were referred to as tax hogs because, in my opinion, there is not a proverbial hog who comes to the trough of the slop to eat up the exemption of paying any taxes any more than the Daily Oklahoman and its owner. I assure you, Mr. Gaylord doesn't miss a meal. I assure you that he has no hunger, that he's not cold during the winter and he's not hot during the summer. He can take $600 million and buy the Grand Ole Opry because he's got it to do it with. But in the same vein, I submit to you that when he talks about the people of Oklahoma, he is a selfish man.
We have so many people that donate with us throughout the year.
We are asking anyone who's eligible to come in and donate at our fixed sites, and those people who are scheduled to have blood drives with us this month, we're asking them to see if they can't find a few more people who might be willing to donate.
Oklahoma City residents awoke to picture postcard winter scenes this morning as 2 inches of snow fell last night. But on city roads, the scene wasn't so pretty. The snow and sub-freezing temperatures left most city streets a frozen mess, something many Sunday morning drivers weren't prepared for. At dozens of intersections around the city, drivers found their cars just wouldn't stop sliding at red lights and stop signs. Trying to climb ice-covered hills sometimes took 10 minutes or more, and lots of nerves. Sliding cars sometimes ended up in front yards and needed a helping hand to get back on the road again. Throughout the city, policemen were swamped with accident calls that just got worse as the day wore on. City trucks carrying salt for the slick spots were backed up too. The 19 trucks in service today just weren't able to keep up with all of the dangerous intersections around town. And officials admit they got a late start because the amount of snow caught them by surprise.
They'd cut the percentage down and telling us if we got any, it'd just be some light snow flurries. And really, when that phone went off this morning about 3 o'clock, it was quite a surprise to us. If we got any at all, we wasn't expecting near this amount.
About the only thing city officials had to be thankful for was that the snow and ice hit today, rather than during rush hour on Monday. Jeff Fowler, Action 4.
I think the President's speech was really directed at a lot of the European members who maybe have had some reservations or some doubt about the sincerity of this President and some of the efforts that he's made. So I think he's kind of taken some of the initiative to say, wait a minute, we're really interested in negotiations. We want the Soviet Union to resume negotiating with us. We're ready. We're willing to talk. We're willing to compromise. We hope that they'll come back, and we feel like it's in their interest and the interest of really the entire world for the superpowers to keep an open dialogue.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt this committee substitute.
To Commissioner Bob Wadley of the Tax Commission, that the Tax Commission had indeed for some months been regarding the administration and feasibility bill, which improves, we think, upon the introduced version in terms of that contrary to charges sometimes made. Law enforcement individuals indicate that there has not been an increase in problems from their aspect. Indeed, in some cases, they suggest that numbers games and other illegal forms of gambling have been threatened and jeopardized by adoption of the lottery, and has kind of cut into the market, if you will.
First thing we found out was that no one had. The other thing that what we wrote and listened.
Distinguished Service Award, Corporate Division, 1983, presented to station KTVY for initiation and execution of its ongoing project, Project Clean and Green, which has played a major role in making the public more aware of the importance of litter control and landscaping. Kathy was the person who really worked on this project and who's directly responsible for it. We want to give you this award and take it to Lee Allen Smith and tell him how much we appreciate all that you all are doing out there. Thank you.
Last week, Oklahoma Corporation Commissioner Jim Townsend told reporters federal access charges of $2 per month were to go into effect this April on residential phone lines. Businesses would see a $6 per month increase tacked onto their monthly rates. Oklahoma commissioners, along with legislators in Washington, are pushing for a delay in those charges. And now it looks like the FCC will comply. The agency has tentatively decided today to delay the access charge until the middle of next year. Townsend is pleased with the move, but feels it may be a mere political ploy.
It's my understanding that approximately 30 senators have petitioned the FCC for a delay in the access charges. It would be interesting to look at the list of senators that have petitioned the FCC to determine what percentage are up for election and the percentage of Democrats and Republicans.
While the debate goes on over the access charge issue, legislators, including Oklahoma Senators Boren and Nichols, will push for Senate Bill 1660. The bill allows for the access charge to be delayed 2 years in order for the FCC to study the effects of divestiture on long-distance companies. And it's Townsend's belief federal officials will find out the industry does not need any more subsidies. Kevin Ogle, Action 4.
Your number, please. Thank you.
If they come in for the permanent hearing and they don't ask to recover that from the ratepayers, that's fine. We, whatever they want to charge the stockholders, the commission has no control over. Where we will become concerned is if they ask for the recovery of the $700,000 from the ratepayers.
Okay. There you are.
Thank you. Hi there.
Financially, we could not survive without our cookie sale. We are indebted to the United Way because they do fund us to about a fourth of our needs, but without the cookie sale, we could not have the program that we have for our girls.
Thank you, honey.
The American tradition is the backbone.
This is Don Buford. He's a rancher from the Shawnee area. He spends his mornings taking care of chores around the Buford Ranch. This morning it means chopping a watering hole for his cattle. The physical requirements involved are tough, but it's part of the job. Ranching is sometimes a lonely occupation, but it does leave time for uninterrupted thinking, a chance to clear the mind and concentrate on other aspects of life. And Don Buford has plenty to think about these days. In the afternoon, Don trades in his axe and work gloves for a handgun and becomes a volunteer deputy for the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office. He's concerned about the crime rate in the county, so he's donating his time to help out the financially beleaguered agency.
They don't have but, see, 4 regular deputies in the whole county, and they use reserves for dispatching and so much stuff like that till if it wasn't for that, they just wouldn't have enough help.
He uses his own car and supplies his own gas for his rounds through the county, but he provides a valuable commodity. By keeping an eye out on rural roads and businesses, Don represents security to out-of-the-way shop owners.
Hi, folks.
How you doing? They respond, and they appreciate you coming around. They feel that it helps, and we do too.
Well, that's good. Well, we'll see you. Okay, take care of yourself.
Don Buford isn't the only volunteer deputy in Pot County. There are others from all walks of life involved in the program, giving their time, effort, and money to a cause they believe in and are willing to work for.
Some people do a lot of things, donate a lot of money to civic things, and it's a contribution to society that I can do. It's my little part that I can do well is doing something that I like to do.
Kevin Ogle, Action 4, near Shawnee.
Approximately 2:45 when the inmate ran into 2 hunters that were hunting rabbits, and they apprehended him. One came to get one of the highway patrol officers, and then we went in and secured the inmate and took him back into the institution.
After recommending $150 million in budget cuts, on Monday the House is expected to begin debate on a sales tax increase. And if the abortive special session in November was any indication, the lobbying at the Capitol this week on the tax issue will be intense.
House Representatives.
During the special session, the switchboard at the Capitol was jammed with calls from voters. Some say it was the biggest volume since the ERA, and most of those calls were against any tax increase. Many of the state's teachers don't want that to happen again. So after a rally yesterday, some teachers, like these in Moore, spent their Sunday getting ready for a massive lobbying effort this week. That includes the names and phone numbers of each lawmaker. They're working so hard this time because, some admit, they were out-lobbied by anti-tax forces in November.
I think that the teachers realize that we can't sit back and expect the legislators just to do the, quote, right thing. We've seen that we're going to actually have to voice our opinion as strongly as they did, because I do believe there are more of us.
But the anti-tax forces aren't standing still either. Today, the group known as the Taxpayer Survival Team ran a half-page ad in the Sunday Oklahoman, urging those opposed to any tax hike to use the phone and call their legislator.
Now we find that we have no surpluses, that the money's been spent, some of it's been mismanaged, and now they come to the taxpayer and say, you got to make up what we misspent, and that's not fair.
What makes this tax issue even more troublesome for lawmakers is the fact that this is an election year, and they know no matter how they vote on a tax increase, they're bound to make some voters mad.
It could affect everyone's reelection, but the truth of the matter is, and I guess it's just kind of blind faith, but I really believe that the people in Oklahoma will see the magnitude of the problem. I hope they understand that the legislature is acting in good faith.
With that in mind, lawmakers start tackling the tax increase issue tomorrow, knowing that a lot of people are looking over their shoulders. Jeff Fowler, Action 4.
There's lots of ways we can go.
The state alleges that Kendall Vowell and Ronald Hope were involved in a crime spree which included arson, armed robbery, burglary, and the murder of Larry Ellis. Vowell testified that Larry Ellis stopped to help him after Vowell's car ran out of gas. Vowell said that co-defendant Ronald Hope shot Ellis 6 times with a pistol and once with a rifle. Vowell said Ellis rolled over and moaned, "Quit." Vowell then said Hope started shouting, I'm happy, I killed him, and I'm glad." And then Hope robbed Ellis's bullet-riddled body. The defendant then described how Hope burned Ellis's truck and pressured Vowell into robbing a convenience store. Vowell said he'd spent time in prison for a nonviolent crime in the past. During cross-examination, District Attorney Tully McCoy asked Vowell if he remembered being charged with several counts of assault and battery or of breaking a young child's collarbone. Vowell said he didn't remember those charges. Throughout the day, Vowell had difficulty answering the prosecutor's questions. However, Vowell had no trouble telling the jury that Ronald Hope shot Larry Ellis.